Thank you for coming back. This is the fourth session that we have on generative AI. And just to give you a sense of where we've been and where we're going, in the last session, we looked at an example, a practical example that Paul walked us through on taking a new company. We used the example of coffee cups for left-handed people, and we went through all the things you could do, but it felt very much like you had a McKinsey consultant next to you, helping you with a bunch of choices you had to make. You know, what's the competitive framework? What's a SWOT analysis? What agreement should you have with your vendors? What are the different capabilities between different providers? All of those kinds of things. What taglines should you have? So on. And today, I'm going to start with an example that brings in some of the new capabilities that are coming in. And then the bulk of the session today is going to be looking at an existing company and how people without a lot of technical, with no coding experience, are starting to use generative AI to take functions within the company and make them faster, better, cheaper, more personalized, and so on. So I'm just going to start with a quick review of things that have been happening in the industry over the last 2 or 3 weeks. The first one is just there's a bunch of new capabilities, general availability of capabilities that have been around for a while, but under some kind of arrangement where you had to use an API or some complexity to get in. And one of them is the integration of image generators. So you could go into Bing that uses the ChatGPT, and then it can call DALL-E. And so when you put a prompt in, you can go back in. I'll give you an example of that. Integration with voice. Whisper is probably one of the best voice recognition systems out there. And if you look at your ChatGPT screen, you'll see a little button. You can click on it. I'll give you an example of that. Integrated analytics, probably of these things, the most exciting thing, which is code interpreter. And that is, it's poorly named in that you think about it as something that interprets code, but it's fundamentally something that does analysis. I'm not going to go into that. We're just not going to have time for it today, but we'll do it in the next session. But it's pretty remarkable what it can do. And then the first glimpse at an experiential multimedia generative media. We're going to look at porn. So just a little bit of a heads up and warning on that. What you've also got is we've been talking mostly about OpenAI's models, but you have a set of other models that are now coming into the fore that do some things as well or better than OpenAI, and other things not quite as well. OpenAI still is the leader in it, and ChatGPT still is the leader in it. So we've had Claude 2.0 from that's just come out, and they use this notion of constitution AI. So a whole bunch of people left OpenAI, and the model that they have released in does not require any payment, but has this notion of you have a constitution, and that constitution overrides everything else. And their constitution is based on UN principles of human rights and a whole range of human principles that come in. And they're trying to train the models in ways that preserve those values in the large language model. Now, their initial testing on their model says that it's actually really good. It's a little bit behind ChatGPT in terms of answering tests and things like that. And that tends to be one of the things that's happening right now, which is that as you put restrictions on models, they tend to also lose some capability. That's happening with ChatGPT as well. Then you've had Elon Musk, who's created X.ai. And what's interesting there is, as Elon is wont to do, he's talking about sort of changing the course of humanity. But it was not that long ago that Elon Musk said that AI, the companies building AI, are summoning the demon, and asked for a pause, a 6-month pause on all development and release of models. And so it's interesting, and there's been a lot of chatter about, after you say that it's going to destroy humanity, the next thing you do is immediately try and buy all of the chips that are necessary, and also hire some of the smartest minds to come and join your generative AI model. What you're also getting is, on the one hand, you have this push between between companies that are broad models and trying to put restrictions on it. And then you have a whole range of open source models that have no restrictions on them that are getting better and better. And so you've got this landscape that's developing that's going to be really interesting to see how it works through. And then you've got a set of canaries in the coal mine, so early things. The FTC has taken legal action against OpenAI, pretty broad set of actions to, they're still asking a set of pretty broad questions about OpenAI, but it opens up the cost then of being in a business like this. There are individual and corporate lawsuits on using data for training. So Sarah Silverman has filed a suit, but there are a bunch of companies filing suits. Getty has filed a suit against Diffusion, and so on. The EU has draft regulations that are extremely restrictive, and a lot of the companies in Europe have now appealed to the regulators saying that if these restrictions come in, we're going to be way behind the rest of the world. And the Hollywood strike is now on. One of the issues in it, not the only issue, is the use of generative AI for doing a lot of the work that actors and writers and other talent within the industry does. What's interesting about Hollywood is that on the one hand, it is, it's a harbinger of many things that are going to happen because they already have tremendous inequality. I was shocked to see that their healthcare, to qualify for their healthcare program, you have to earn $26,000 a year. And I think only 13 or 14% of the members of the union qualify for that. And so you get this huge discrepancies already, and this is only going to make it a lot worse. In the last session we will be going through a lot of the macro issues that come up and some of the choices that people are making. So let's jump right into a quick example. And what I'm going to illustrate to you, if you remember what Paul was doing last time, is he was using ChatGPT to come up with text descriptions of what the state of the market was and so on. And this is from Ethan Mollick's oneusefulthing.org. It's a really great blog for those of you who want to get deeper into some of these things, but it's also written in a way that's very accessible. And so, so let's say, the prompt is that as a fashion designer who create a design that matches the latest trends and come up with a design for a new on-trend shoe. But then the big change here is I've now said, pass that detailed suggestion to an image creator. So you can now take something you've done in text and create an image from it. The other thing that's interesting here is for this, I was using Bing. It would be very slow to do it live, but these are the actual prompts, is that I'm telling it to look at trends, or it is looking at the trends in the spring and summer of 2023. So you say ChatGPT was trained, the training ended in 2021. And what Bing is doing is it's going back in and getting sources. So it's combining search engine and generative AI and pulling in data. And so it's actually giving you the data sites that it's using right now to come up with its plan. And then using that, it comes up with a design of a set of shoes and comes up with 4 designs, but then it sends the prompt directly to DALL-E, and DALL-E creates the designs. And so now you've just closed that whole circle of telling it to be a designer, and it comes back with designs. And then increasingly, what we are seeing is this cycle of saying, tell ChatGPT to improve itself. And so here I said, okay, you've come up with 4 designs, still acting, critique your own work and pick the one that you think is the best, and then send the image or send a signal to, or send a message to chat to DALL-E to tell it and create new prompts to improve the design. So I'm telling it, go back, test your work, tell me which one you really like, which one you don't, then and then improve the prompts that we had before. And what it does is it goes through each of the designs, does a critique of it. And when it looks at, for example, design 4 that I've marked here, it says it has a bad color choice of pink and green, which makes it childish and tacky. The straps are too simple and boring. So it's pretty good about criticizing itself in some pretty strong words. And then it revises the prompt. And so when it does that, I then go back and say, okay, you've picked this. Now I want you to improve the design that you had before, but also create advertising for it, revise the ad design, so go through the improvement cycle. And then as a human, I look at it and I say, maybe it would be good to add some diversity to the thing and then improve it again. And so what it's doing here is it's giving me its best shot at what the ads could look like. It has multiple layouts, multiple kinds of people in it. And in that process, it's also making some judgments about which ones it thinks are going to work. And so it's really going much, much further than what we did before in both the creative structure of it, but also in coming back in and criticizing it. So now I say, okay, do this for Japan. And so it says for the Japanese market, this is what I'm going to do. Here are the sources I'm using. And then it goes back in and creates a set of ads for Japan. But as you can see from the bottom two ads, it still has, even though this is Japan, a relatively homogeneous society, it has a diverse set of people in the back. And you can ask yourself whether you want to do this or not. But then it does all the copy in Japanese. And so what you can start to do is think about going completely global right at the beginning. So I go back in and I say, this is human creativity. And I say, no, I want a 40-year-old Asian female in the ad, and I want a lion. And so it starts to create something. Now, clearly the proportions are a little bit off, but if you look carefully at the ads that it's created, it has forgotten the shoe that it chose. So you can see it's not a platform shoe that she's wearing. And so I go back in and say, you just screwed up, you have the wrong shoe on the model. And so it apologizes very politely as usual, and then gets the thing right. And so you're getting to a level of sophistication that even a month ago would have been much harder to do. So I want to just pause here for a second and give you a sense of how the complete cycle is sort of being closed. Here I was integrating images. What you can also do is integrate voice. So how would you use it? I'm looking at this. One of the reasons why I didn't do a live thing is that my internet is really slow. And so I'm looking at that and saying, I'm really not happy with Xfinity. And if you look at your ChatGPT screen on the right, there's a little thing with some lines on it. If you click on that, Whisper comes on, and you can just speak into it. And so if you look at my phone back here, there's a little, I go into ChatGPT, and on it, there's, if you can see it, there's a little set of lines there. And as I speak, it will take the prompt. And so what I told it to do was I said, my name is Shekhar Ghosh. I want you to write a letter for me to Xfinity, complaining about the bills and demanding that they repay me for what they owe me and canceling my service, make it legalistic and firm, and tell them I've been a customer for 7 years. And so it immediately starts to write the letter. And when it does that, I notice it spelled my name wrong. So I say, correct the spelling of my name. And this is all verbal. I could be driving when I'm doing this. And then it writes this whole long letter to Xfinity. I could dictate a letter in the current technology. Without an assistant, I can't tell them to write a letter in the following form. Now, of course, in the traditional GPT capabilities, I can say, make it shorter, make it longer, make it stronger, anything that I want, and it will keep rewriting the letter in the style that I want. That's pretty remarkable. I'm going to skip this. This is ChatGPT. Now, what you've seen in these letters is that, and these examples that I just gave, is that it's unfailingly polite. And so, I'm really pissed off at Xfinity right now. And so I want them, and let's say that I want to be insulting in my process. This is somebody had done this, which is interesting. It says, you're an insult bot, and your job is to respond to my question in the rudest possible way, cursing and swearing your way through. And first question is, do you understand your job? And you can see the response that it gives. And then after this, once you've given it this personality, it can then go back and say, I'm going to LA next week. What are some good restaurants? Same kind of thing, but it will answer you in an insulting, demeaning sort of way. So in Providence, Providence is a restaurant in LA. They serve fancy ass food. Maybe you'll choke on a fishbone. And so you can start to change the tone, change the structure of all of these things. And so then we get to multimedia. This is a new product that's been created by a company called Lovence, and it's a ChatGPT pleasure companion. So it's a combination of a story writing bot and a sex toy that go together. So it's the way it's described is that you can give it any type of story, romantic or sensual, juicy or spicy. You can choose any characters you want. And whatever you can imagine, it will create a story around that. But then it ties the story to the device. And so as you're going through particularly high energy pieces of your story, it will change the behavior of the device itself. And so you're starting to see your integration of different kinds of things all the way across across the spectrum. So what I think that before we go into the next section, what I'd just like to do is start with a little bit of a framework, and we'll come back to this again. When you think about using generative AI in your business, all of these capabilities, you've got some choices on where you start. On the one side, you can start with a task, and that's where most companies start. So you say, I do customer service. This is the way I want to do it. The task in customer service is to answer a question, make a recommendation, whatever it is. And from that, you can be addressing your current customers or new value propositions to new customers. Or what you could do is, instead of just taking a task, you go to a system orientation. You say, how do I transform my whole company to be AI native? If you think about the internet, when it first came along, companies like Amazon would come out, and a lot of traditional companies would say, oh, we're the same as Amazon because we have a website. But the fundamental nature of what it was meant to be a web company was different than just putting a website on top of an existing model. And we have the same distinction coming up here. And so a lot of startups now are starting with the AI orientation and generative AI orientation, and then moving from that. Today's example will be in box one. And so typically what companies do, existing companies, is they start with something like cost, then they'll move to add new features. Then they'll think, if I'm going to do this at scale, I have to start to change all my systems. And it's both systems and organization. And then you think about new business models. And so I'm going to turn it over to Drew, who's going to talk about the journey that he's made as a non-technical, business-oriented person in trying to bring some of the capabilities into an existing business. Drew, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Shekar. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see that? I think so. Cool. Yes, yeah. So yeah, that's a great handoff, Shekar, talking about the existing businesses and the existing orientation. I think that will be really helpful as we go through this deck. Today, I really want to share my company's journey working with, building, and implementing AI in order to share some strategies and insights we've learned along the way. My hope is that it helps you guys see the power and approachability and application of this technology in whatever business you're working in. So a brief structure for this is we're just going to give some background information of who I am, what my company Tesseract does. And then we want to talk a little bit about how Tesseract, we've approached AI with our strategy, and then give a quick demo of a tool that we've built, and then discuss implications and where does it go from here. So want to just start off, give a brief background about myself, not really to show you how much of an expert I am, but more really to show the opposite. I have a business background. I'm not a software engineer or a computer scientist. I didn't start ahead of where any of you are today. So really just want to kind of emphasize how this technology is applicable and useful for really everyone. And the fact is that there's just not a lot of people that have a ton of experience working with AI. It's just not been around that long. You know, ChatGPT started in late November of last year, less than 9 months ago. I started playing with it in December of last year, but mostly for like party tricks, not really anything that useful. I used it for the first time for work purposes in January of this year. Used it to write some basic JavaScript. Again, I'm not a coder, so to do that felt like a big accomplishment to me and a big enhancement to my skills. ChatGPT launches plugins in March 2023. That was a fun time to start playing with it. And then I just started, really digging into all the different cool new tools that were being applied, getting your meeting minutes automatically generated and generating copy with all these different tools that were coming out. But it really wasn't until about early June this year where I was really thinking about what does it look like to build an enterprise solution for my company, not just have these one-off productivity hacks, but something that actually kind of fundamentally changes the business. And so I didn't start doing that until June again of this year. So it's really everything you're going to see today has really been in the last 6 weeks or so. And it's primarily been built by myself. And this is not my primary job. I'll show you in a second, but I run a short-term rental management business, and it's our busy season. So this has really just been nights and weekends, probably 10, 15, maybe 20 hours a week for 6 weeks or so. But wanting to show just the speed and iteration in which you can use this tool. So to give a little background about my company, Tesseract, we are the fastest growing Airbnb management company in the state of Virginia. We are a turnkey property manager. So, and we are handling everything from the booking of your unit to guest communication, to turnovers, to cleans, to laundry. We do that all in-house. We do maintenance in-house. If you're an owner, you really just hand us your property and we will hand you a check at the end of the month. And so I really just stress that to emphasize that we're not a West Coast VC-backed tech company. We're an East Coast bootstrap service business. And we have 80% of our employees are hourly manual labor employees that are cleaning, doing laundry, doing groundskeeping. It's not the type of company that you immediately think of and say, AI is going to disrupt that. But that's sort of the point. So now I kind of want to talk through our AI strategy and how we were thinking about this. And so this is a chart that McKinsey came out with last month in their June impact of generative AI report, which I really recommend reading. And this is the report that really got me thinking, because they map the different functions of a business. So if you think about what Shakar just said, like starting to automate different functions, that's kind of that's what McKinsey was looking at. And they were saying, okay, what are the functions in the business that are going to have the highest impact by AI? And we're going to map those based on different criteria. And at the top, you see things that you would expect, right? You see the software engineering, you see the product development, you see the product R&D. But what really stood out to me on this report was that you also see customer operations, sales, you see marketing. And so I really started to think, maybe AI can disrupt us. Maybe that does even apply to a service business like mine. And so wanting to really ask that question of, if it can, how could it disrupt us? And so then, you start the search of all these different applications of AI, right? And there's so many of them. You can go on Twitter and read, all the threads and all the different cool new tools. It feels like stuff's coming out every single day. And so the question is, how do you narrow your focus? How do you decide what to look at? And so for me, I came up with a company or a criteria for our company that is cost reduction, revenue generation, competitive moat potential, our strategic goals, and future capabilities. And so digging into each of those a little bit, not anything too complex. Cost reduction, how can I save money with AI? Is there a way that I can automate work that a human's doing and do it with AI and thus saving money? Revenue generation, is there a way that we can either expand or improve our service offerings, generate more revenue per customer, get additional customers, or maybe keep customers for longer? And then moat potential, is there some sort of secret sauce that we have that's going to keep our competitors from just going off the shelf and buying the same sort of tool that we just built ourselves? Do we have some sort of proprietary data set or some unique insights that it's going to make our AI solution better than what the market can provide? And then strategic goals. Will our solution disproportionately benefit our company relative to our competitors? This one was a big one for us. And then future capabilities. What can our solution become? Does it unlock previously impossible capabilities? So taking that lens and that framework, I want to look at our company real quick. Tesseract, break out the 5 business units that we have. And I looked at what are the potential solutions that AI could have in each of these different departments. And so operations is the bulk of our company, the bulk of our expenses is there. That's all the people that are cleaning the units, that they are making the beds, that they are stocking the units, doing landscaping maintenance, whatever it may be. And then we have guest experience. Guest experience, those are our reservationists. They're the ones that are picking up the phone when you call or responding to the message when you message on your Airbnb app. They're responding to issues, they're coordinating maintenance, they're giving you recommendations for things to do. And then we have our revenue management team. They're the ones looking at our pricing and optimizing performance across our portfolio and looking at the market to see how things should be performing. And then you have marketing and leasing. This is our team that's making sure all of our units are listed online, that their listings are up to date, that they have the right pricing, that we're responding to inquiries as they come in. And then owner management. These are the point of contact for our owners, so the strategic advisors for owners who are looking at their property and giving recommendations for the highest ROI investments. And so across all these, again, I was able to brainstorm different solutions. Like operations has a lot of coordination across a lot of different systems and they don't really talk to each other. Is there a way that we could automate that with AI? Guest experience, is there a way that we could provide concierge service, automate that in a personalized way? Revenue management, is there some sort of dynamic pricing tool that can be run and automatically updated through AI? Marketing and leasing, can we generate more content, personalized content, targeted marketing? And then owner management, which would be more of like, can we automatically generate investment recommendations and analysis for our owners so that they can know how their property is performing relative to the market, and then also know the best ways to make investments. So giving that brief overview, I'd be curious to see, and you can answer in the chat if you're willing, what you think the highest and best use for Tesseract would be in terms of like where you would start if you were in my position. Like which one of these would you try and build a tool for if you were in my shoes? Any thoughts? You can respond over the chat. Operations, that's a really good thought. Customer service, ops, revenue management. Yeah, those are a lot of good thoughts. And so operations makes a lot of sense, right? Like it's the highest percent of our OpEx. The drawback about operations is that you can't automate a cleaner. You can't right now, at least with Shakar's example, you can see how maybe one day, but right now I can't automate a cleaner, or I can't automate, someone cutting the grass, but you can automate the coordination. And then revenue management, that's another great one, right? Like pricing, getting that pricing drilled down really nice and tight is super important for our business. But the drawback for us is that there are better positioning companies that have more revenue management data across more markets that could probably build that tool quicker. And I don't know if we have as much of a moat potential. I've seen a lot of the third one, which is actually what we talked about, or what we decided, which was guest experience, right? So guest experience is actually interesting. And one of the biggest reasons we chose guest experience, and I didn't give you this information at first, was that, one of our biggest strategic disadvantages as Tesseract is, like I said, we're one of the fastest growing short-term rental management companies in the area, in the state. And, with that, we have increasing capabilities operationally, but what we've kind of lost is that there's more and more layers between, the upper management and owners and the actual guests. And so a lot of our competitors are actually not nearly the same size of us. And that's actually their biggest advantage, is that they're able to provide this high level of personalized service without cutting through all this red tape of processes and standards. And we used to be.
Drew, could you just pause for 1 second? I think what Drew just said here is really important when you're thinking about starting, because you have at one hand, how big is the impact going to be? So 67% is so much higher than 13%. But the other side is, how easy is it to do this? And what's your objective? So you could start by saying, my objective is to add competitive advantage, or my objective is to reduce cost. And I think that one of the objectives that in this very early stage that's worth considering is just learning, saying, what is a problem that is sort of the right size for me, given where I am, to learn about what this can actually do. And once I do that, then also teach people around about how this can work. So it's not too complicated, not too organizationally taxing, and so on. And I think that sort of picking the first area that you go into, that's a real problem that you can actually affect a customer or your cost or your operations becomes really important, because it is really a journey where you're going through the 4 quadrants that I'd mentioned before. And the question is, how do you bring everybody along, and how do you learn for yourself?
Totally. That's a great point. Yeah. And so to kind of illustrate that point even further, yeah, there's all these different criteria, and what is your objective? And so again, going back to that criteria that I originally showed, that personalized concierge just wins out on the most of those different areas. And so one thing that is also great to point out here, Shakar, to your point, is that you can actually create value and benefit in multiple of these areas at the same time. So you can have a single target, but you can also think of it holistically. Of a lot of these different solutions can both reduce costs and generate extra revenue, or they might also give you a moat. And so thinking about the decision-making process in a holistic way of all the different impacts and implications of using AI in a specific way. But again, I love your point about learning, and that's been a huge one for me as well. So, but yeah, we chose personalized concierge. We think that gives us a strategic advantage as being a large management company that can still provide personalized guest concierge service in a cost-effective way, which has been one of the biggest gaps in our service offerings as we've continued to grow. And that's one of the things that, as our owners are no longer the ones answering the call, that has suffered the most. And so we've decided to focus on personalized concierge. And with that, I kind of want to give a little bit of a picture of what I think this future in-state, this future customer journey map could look like with this new technology of AI. And so, in the future, I can see, Jane Doe books a reservation for 4, and immediately our AI and our model is evaluating her data. When did she book? How long did she book? What area did she book for? How much lead time does she have? How many guests are coming? And the AI is able to then build a persona to give us more information and the probability of who Jane is. And so maybe we learn that Jane is a mother of 2 and her family is going on a weekend trip to Virginia Beach. So what are Jane's needs? Well, based on the model and other guests like Jane in the past, maybe she needs dinner taken care of. Maybe she needs activities for her kids to do. And she wants to rest and relax herself. And so the AI is going to proactively, without her even needing to ask it to, book reservations at the right kind of restaurants, provide recommendations for her kids, offer, a discounted massage at the unit during nap time. And that ability for us to be able to proactively meet her needs in a personalized way that is tailored to who she is, and layering on our expertise of the area is going to be that magic cocktail that really adds an elevated guest experience that is associated with our management more so than even the billions, which gives us some strategic advantages as a management company. And so we're really excited about this as a holistic future state. And that's not where we are today, obviously. What I want to show you today is more of a first stab, a step in this direction. And so what I've created is a tool that automatically generates a personalized itinerary for every single one of our guests. And so kind of walking you through that, what I want to do first is show you what our current state is before AI, and kind of walk you through the before and after of that. And so right now, we don't offer personalized itineraries unless someone asks us to, because it takes about 15 minutes of time to do that. And so I'm going to give an example of what it would look like if you did ask us. And so say I booked this reservation, and I go ahead and I ask Tesseract, hey, can you give me an itinerary for my trip, on these dates? Our reservations is going to say, absolutely, let me go look at your reservation data. They're going to say, I'm staying at Princess Anne. I'm going to go look at where that property is on the map. And then I'm going to go ahead and as a reservationist at Tesseract, a human being, going to go ahead and generate this itinerary. And so we have a couple of tools to make this as easy as possible. We have templates already drafted. And so I'm going to go ahead and as a reservationist, I'm going to fill this out. And bear with me, it's going to seem a little bit drawn out, but that's sort of the point. I want you to see what we're able to replace. And so I say, you know, we're going to go from 7-11 to 7-12 in Norfolk, Virginia. And I'm gonna, you know, all this, oops. Sorry, that's the sort of stuff that happens when it's all manual. Fill in the name, again, the dates of the trip. And then I'm going to go and compile some recommendations. We have a vetted list so that, you know, you're not just starting at Google, but, you know, you're still having to choose different itineraries. And so, you know, I'm going to go look at our event list and our activities list and say, I'm going to find something in, you know, Norfolk, Virginia. I can filter by different things. I'm going to go add links to this, and I'm going to do this for, you know, for activities. I'm going to do this for restaurants. I'm going to do this for maybe a bar, an experience. So, you know, the point of all this is just to show you that it's not, even with templates and even with, you know, different hacking tools, like it's not that quick. It's not that easy. It's a little bit tedious. And that's the reason that we don't do it for every guest. We only do it for, again, probably about 5% of our guests are asking us for it, and we're not advertising this as a service. And so, you know, that's sort of where we are today in it. And then, you know, ChatGPT comes out, and all of a sudden we're able to, you know, ask it to generate an itinerary. And all of a sudden, we have an instant itinerary that's built for us, and that's, you know, way quicker and faster than what I was just doing. It still requires the reservations to take that, copy and paste it in an email and send it, but it's way quicker. And so there's a lot of advantages to using this, but again, it's not really the enterprise solution that we're looking for. What the goal is to be able to provide this at scale with as minimal effort as possible by our team. And so that's sort of what I was able to build, or what our team was able to build, I should say. And so what I want to do now is pull up a couple examples of outputs of our tool. And so this is a email itinerary that was generated by ChatGPT and automatically sent based on the reservation that I showed you earlier. And so no human did anything with this. This was all automated. I'll kind of walk you through it quickly to kind of show you what the features are, but, you know, it's based on the dates. It's got a 2-day itinerary. It's got morning, evening, afternoon activities. It's got clickable links, so I can go here and, you know, click on it and get more information. It has drive times from the units. It's pretty robust, and again, there's no human effort put into this. Another example, you know, what if you have a multi-day reservation? And, you know, you can see that this is tailored and catered to, you know, it's a holiday, and having patriotic and festive recommendations for that. And then, you know, some of our guests are not there for vacation. Some of them are there, you know, they need a furnished unit for like a mid-duration stay, 30 to 90 days. And they're there more as a temporary local than a tourist. And so if you have a stay that's over 30 days, this tool automatically, instead of giving you an itinerary, just kind of give you a local guide. And this is custom, again, to your trip and to your dates and to your location. So it gives you drive times, it gives you shop recommendations, it gives you restaurant recommendations, and then grocery store recommendations. And then one other cool feature with this is, so say you get your itinerary and you're reading through it and you're saying, this is great, but, you know, I want to make some slight edits. You could take the email and you could reply to it and say, hi, can we make August 9th a beach day? And then I can go ahead and send this email. And then what that's going to do, it's going to trigger a new draft actually right here, to generate a updated itinerary. As you can see, thank you for your feedback, Mary. Like, here's a beach day on August 9th. And so it can actually make automatic updates to the itinerary based on any feedback. it doesn't send automatically because it's not always perfect. And so it lets our reservations actually take a look over it before it gets sent, but it does automatically make the edits. So that's kind of a look into like the outputs of, you know, what we've done.
Drew,
Yeah.
quick question. A few folks have asked in the chat. So
Yeah.
you have just to clarify, you have a human verify before anything gets sent to the guest. So really the program takes it to 98%, or do you have it fire off to the guest automatically? And if it's the latter, have you gotten any complaints from it? Yeah.
So it does automatically send the initial itinerary. If the guest responds with feedback, it won't automatically send a response. It will just make a draft. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so then I think that's a really interesting point, because has the system gotten anything wrong? Have you gotten any negative feedback, like this makes no sense? I'm curious if you run into that and talk a little bit about that.
Great question. Yes, there is a little bit of that. The biggest things is there's been a couple of times of confusion where it's recommended something that's actually not in the area, or another thing is, you know, ChatGPT is not perfectly, it's not up to date. It's actually old data from 2001. So I've tried to adjust the prompt to give recommendations for more established restaurants so that they're still here. But if something's closed since 2001, that's also created some updates or some errors. So it's not perfect. Yeah, there are some issues with that, but for the most part, people are not asking for it. And so, you know, if there's errors, we've gotten feedback and they're still like, oh, it's more like constructive, like, thank you, this is really helpful. By the way, this didn't like work or whatnot. So, and we kind of put like this is a beta version on the email sampling now, so to kind of mitigate some of those expectations of perfection.
Great, awesome. And just to clarify one more thing, this is all stitched together through open, you know, stuff you have access to off the shelf, right? There, you don't have any proprietary language models and.
Yeah, and I'm going to walk through all of that in a second, so you can get a real good, quick, deep look at like how I piece this together, so that you guys can really see how it works, how the sausage gets made. Hopefully, it's some creative juices flowing. But yeah, just to talk again about the status quo of like where we're starting at. You know, the percent of reservations that we were serving before this were 5%, and we were spending about 15 minutes per reservation on that. That's about $5,000 a year, just to serve 5% of our guests. And so, you know, this is kind of a map of what the tool looks like, how it works. And I'm going to actually break this out and look at each part individually so you can get a good sense of it. But the first part is a guest books on like Airbnb or a platform. It gets automatically put into our guest reservation database, which is Guesty. And then we use Zapier, which is a third-party tool. If you've not looked into Zapier, I really recommend it. That connects different softwares or different SaaS tools pretty easily. And so it just, through Zapier, we're able to just pull some key reservation data into a Google Sheet. And so once we have it in a Google Sheet, there's a lot more you can do with it. And then from there, in your Google Sheet, you can just use a concatenate function to generate a very specific prompt. And then you can use some of that reservation data to input into your prompt to make it a personalized prompt. So it's not just make a general prompt for this person staying in this area. It's like make it for this person whose name is this, who's staying from this date to this date at this specific address. And so that gives you a dynamic prompt. You can also throw an if statement in there, which is what we did. So if it's like a less than 30-day reservation, you're getting one prompt. If it's a greater than 30-day reservation, you're getting another prompt. That gives you a little bit more dynamic flexibility, and that can be expanded in a lot of different ways. And then once you have your prompt, there's actually some cool extensions like GPT for Sheets and Docs that brings ChatGPT into your spreadsheet. And so you can just use a function equals GPT and throw your prompt that you just made into that, and that will generate your itinerary. And then once you have your itinerary, you go back to Zapier and say, hey, take this text in this cell and send it to this email in this other cell, and it will automatically do that. And then for the response, it's the same thing. If there's an email response, Zapier will take that email, put it into a new cell, and you can regenerate that prompt and then resend it back to the guest. And so that's all it really is. I skipped a slide, but essentially now this gives us the capability to serve 100% of our reservations, and it's really zero manual time to complete. The only manual time would be on the responses if we have to approve those being sent. But that wasn't even taken into account before. So, the cost of Tesseract is maybe $3,000 if you count like the cost of Zapier and you take the cost of ChatGPT Pro. But the value of that work in terms of labor is like $90,000. It would cost us 2 full-time employees to be able to send personalized itineraries to every single one of our guests. And so the impact is pretty broad. So we have a lot of power in that. And this is really just the initial version. Again, like proof of concept, MVP. Where we want to go with this is a little bit more robust. And it does require a little bit more technical skills, but we've already started mapping this out, and it's not that much more different conceptually than what we were doing. It's just a little bit more advanced. Instead of using Google Sheets, you use a cloud database. And this just gives us the functionality to really use our own model, to use different tools like LangChain that would be able to integrate with a third-party service. So instead of saying, hey, we recommend you going to this restaurant, we could say, we booked you a reservation at this restaurant. Or instead of saying, hey, there's a grocery store down the street, we could say, hey, we ordered ordered groceries to be delivered to your apartment. They'll be there when you arrive. And so that gives us a lot more flexibility. And really going through all this and really starting to dig into like how these things work together and the different implications and the different capabilities it gives us, it's really showed me like how far this can go. And so that kind of brings me to like this last point of where does this go? I'm going to wrap this up, but yeah, I started with thinking, can I figure out a couple of functions that we can use AI in at Tesseract, and really starting to realize that this is going to perpetuate into every single function that we do, and every single function pretty much in every business. It feels as revolutionary as the internet. And so, again, I really love Shekar's point he made of like the learning is some of the best value you can get. And because, this isn't something that you can just ignore. Liang and I were talking about this the other day, but he told me this quote of, your advantage for AI is short-lived, but you're penalized for not using it. So essentially, if you're not moving forward with this technology, you're moving backward. There's no more staying at the status quo. Things are changing quickly. But the cool part about it is it's so accessible. It's something that you can start with today. You don't need to go to a coding boot camp. You don't need to go back to school. You can just start tinkering with a lot of the tools that are out today. And so that's what we've done. It's been really a fun journey for us. I've learned a ton, and excited to see where this goes. But that's sort of what I got for you guys.
I think, I just add one thing to sort of where do you go with this? And that's that if you think about that 4-box matrix, you say, okay, I'm going to do something for myself. But then once you can do it, you'll keep learning and making it better. So the first version that Tesseract's doing is sort of kludgy in terms of what they do, but they will keep making that better. And then you say that every hospitality business, every airline, every other business needs or could use something like this if it costs nothing, or if it costs a marginal amount. So you can imagine airlines, you can imagine hotels, you can imagine all of these people using it as a tool to build some more relationship with their customers. And so what Tesseract then has the opportunity to do is to say, we'll offer this on as a service to anybody else in the hospitality business, or to just starting with every other company that's doing Airbnb or VRBO management. And so suddenly the scope of what you're doing starts to expand because you've learned something about how to do this, and you are 6 months ahead, which in this world is quite a bit of time ahead. But the key thing is just to jump in and start to do it. And, as I said right at the beginning, you're starting with a new set of capabilities now coming in, voice, images. Soon there's going to be a bunch of other things, coding of different sorts. All of these things are going to start to get integrated. And at some point, the whole enterprise has got to then step back and say, okay, how do we organize all of our functions? What business are we in? So that process is actually a pretty quick process as it goes through it. So let's open up for some questions.